Okay, so today we are going to continue on with chapter 10. We're going to spend day 2 of lesson 1. Today what we're going to be doing is completing the square. Now, when you use completing the square to solve a quadratic, that'll give us the solutions. But really all we're trying to do is get it into the correct form. So we're going to transform it from this standard form into where we can see the vertex. So again, what we're trying to make it look like is this form. This has actually got an x squared in it. So what we're trying to transform it into is this, x minus h squared. And then remember the 4p is outside of the parentheses. And then the y minus k. And we did this on day 1. So remember h and k is our vertex. Remember the square term needs to be over on one side of your equation, so it's got to be over there on the left and nothing else around it. So let's go ahead and begin our process for completing the square. So what we're going to do first is you should check to see if there's a number in front of x squared. This one only has a 1 in front, so we don't need to divide out anything. So all we're going to do, and instead of moving the constant to the other side, I'm going to do this a little differently. I'm going to rewrite it, and I'm going to leave like a gap. So I'm going to go ahead and do y equals, and then I'm going to have x squared minus 4x. I'm going to leave a little bit of a space here, and then close the parentheses, and then I'm going to write the plus 1 over here. Now, remember for completing the square, the next step is to take the b term, divide it by 2, square it, and add it to both sides. Now, I'd be supposed to be adding it to the left and adding it to the right. So when I go to add it to the 1 that I should have shifted over, I'm really going to subtract the number I get. And I know this is a little confusing, but just as we do the examples, it'll get a little better. So I'm taking my b term, which is the negative 4. I'm dividing it by 2, and I get negative 2. Now, remember what you get when you divide by 2 because that helps when you go to factor your trinomial. So then I'm going to square it, and I get positive 4. So that's what I'm filling in my blank space, the plus 4. Now, I should be adding 4 to the y side, but since I didn't move the 1 over, I'm really going to subtract it because it's really supposed to be on the other side. So whatever you're adding to the other side, we're really going to subtract it from that number we shifted out. Okay, so then the next thing I need to do is factor this trinomial that's in the parentheses. And again, if you remember what you got when you divided by 2, that's going to be your factor. So it's just going to be x minus 2 squared. I'm going to simplify the positive 1 minus 4, and I get minus 3. Now remember, we're trying to make it look like this up here. So now what I need to do is move the 3 over to the y, and I get y plus 3 equals x minus 2 squared. Now remember, we want that x minus 2 squared on the left side. So now I'm just going to flip-flop it. So I'm just going to take and write the x minus 2 on the left and the y plus 3 on the right. And now it's in the form. Now, I need to find the value of p. If you remember from this equation up here, the 4p is located outside of the parentheses. I don't have a number there, but I can assume that there's a 1 there. So to find my p-value, I'm going to do 4p equals 1. I need to solve for p, so I'm going to divide both sides by 4, and p equals 1/4. I'm now at the point of what I did on day 1. I have my equation. I can find my vertex. Remember, your vertex is the h and the k, so I'm going to pull out the hk. My vertex is at 2, negative 3. And now to find the focus and the directrix, remember the distance that the focus and the directrix is from this vertex is the p-value. So let's go ahead first and graph the parabola. Then we'll go back and calculate the ordered pair for the focus and the equation for the directrix. So I'm going to go ahead and graph my vertex. Remember, when we're making our U shape or our C shape, we need to find one other ordered pair. Remember, when it's an x squared, it's going to look like a U or an upside down U. But because our 4p value is positive, it'll be a U shape. Now, the easiest ordered pair for me to find is going to be the y-intercept when I'm given this in standard form. Because remember, the y-intercept is right here at the end. But I'll go ahead and show you the math behind it. It's plugging in 0 for x. So whenever I want to find the y-intercept, I'm going to set x equal to 0. And here's my original equation. X squared minus 4x plus 1. When I plug in the zeros, I get y equals 1. So my ordered pair for my y-intercept is the ordered pair 0, 1. I now have 2 points that I can use to make my parabola. Remember, we're going to use the axis of symmetry to get the third point. So let's go ahead and graph these things. So first I'll graph the vertex. The vertex is the ordered pair 2, -3. So I'll come over here. My y-intercept, again, was the ordered pair 0, 1. I'm going to draw in my axis of symmetry. Remember, it's going to be this vertical line through the vertex. And then I can come up with a point that's symmetrical. So I can put another point over here so I can create my U. Remember, the focus point is located inside the parabola. And remember, where it's located is the distance we need to travel is this p-value. So the focus point is going to be 1/4 away from the vertex. So it's really close to it because it's only 1/4. And then the directrix would be 1/4 in the other direction. Now, we need to come up with the ordered pair. I can't just put a dot there and say, hey, there's my focus, there's my directrix. I actually have to come up with the equation of the line for the directrix and the ordered pair for the focus. So again, we're going to take our vertex point, which is 2 and -3. Remember, when it's a U shape, we're going to be working with the y value. Because notice, from the vertex, we went up 1/4. So I'm going to get my new ordered pair by doing -3 plus 1/4. And that's going to give me my new point, or my new coordinates here for the focus. So the focus is going to be located at 2, -2 3/4. If you want to work with this and make it an improper fraction, I would take the -3, put it over 1. Common denominator here is 4. And then this would become -12, which is a -11 over 4. So you could either list your focus as a mixed number or as an improper fraction. I now need to find the equation for the directrix, because remember, the directrix is always a line. So since it's a U shape, it's going to be y equals, again, I'm working with the y of the vertex, so -3 minus 1/4 this time, because I'm going below my parabola, I'm going down, and I would get my directrix to be y equals -3 and 1/4. So finding the focus and the directrix is the same thing that we did on day 1, once we get the equation in the appropriate form. Let's try the next example. When we complete the square, our first step is to make sure that the number in front of x squared or our y squared is a 1. This time it's a 3. So this time it's a little differently. So make sure you're paying close attention. This is where it's going to get a little shaky. So watch what's going on. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to divide just the variables, so just these two, by 3. So I'm going to basically factor out the 3, and I get x squared, or I'm dividing everything by 3, and it becomes 2/3 x. I'm going to leave the blank space, and then I'm going to shift the -4 over. I now need to take the b term, divide it by 2. Because it's a fraction, I'm just going to multiply it by 1/2, because divide by 2 is really multiplied by the reciprocal. So I'm going to take -2/3, multiply that by 1/2, and I get -2/6. I can simplify that to -1/3. Remember, you now take that and square it, and it becomes 1/9. Okay, so now what I need to be doing here is adding 1/9 to both sides. But remember, I factored out a 3 here. So when I add the 1/9 to this side, I also have to take into consideration, I have to multiply the 1/9 by the number I divided out. So this is really what I'm going to be adding here is 1/3, because 3 times 1/9 is 1/3. And again, I'm supposed to be adding it, so really I'm going to subtract it. So that's where it gets a little shaky, but just memorize the steps. The number that I'm filling in here is the 1/9. And now I factor that trinomial. And again, if you remember what you got when you divided by 2, you don't even have to think about trying to factor that crazy fraction trinomial. It just becomes x minus 1/3. The 3's still out here. I need to subtract this. Now, I could just say it's -4 1/3, or you could say it's -13/3 if you want to make it an improper fraction. I now need to get it in the right form, so now I need to add the 4 1/3 to the other side. And I get y plus 4 1/3, or 13/3, 3x minus 1/3 squared. Again, I want the squared term on the left, so I'm just going to flip-flop these and write 3x minus 1/3 squared equals y plus 4 1/3. I now need to only have the x squared term over there, so I need to divide both sides by 3. So now this becomes x minus 1/3 squared. And then again, remember I need a 4p, so I'm going to go ahead and put that as a 1/3. And then y plus 4 1/3. It's now in the correct form. I can pull my h and k out. This is h, this is k. So my vertex is located at 1/3, and then -4 1/3, opposite. If you'd rather write it as an improper fraction, it would be 13/3. Either way you could write it. Since we're graphing this, it's probably easier to work with it as a mixed number. Okay, so now I need to come up with a second point so I can get my U shape. So again, I'm going back to the beginning, because again, if it's in standard form, which it is, my y-intercept's staring at me right here. It's just 0, -4. But again, I'll show you the math. So to get the y-intercept, I'm going to take the original, y equals 3x squared minus 2x minus 4. Again, I'm setting x equal to 0. So 3 times 0 squared minus 2 times 0 minus 4. So y equals 0 plus 0 minus 4. Y equals -4. So now I have two order pairs, and then I use my axis of symmetry to get the third. So again, this is going to be kind of tricky to graph, but we can do it. So I'm going to go over to the right to 1/3 and then down to -4 1/3. So my vertex is going to be located somewhere down here. 1, 2, 3, 4, probably about here. I'll put a dot. Then my y-intercept is right there. Remember, you have the axis of symmetry here. So to get the symmetrical point, just come over here. And again, just draw a little U here. Again, I'm not looking for precisions. I just need to see somewhere labeled on your paper the other order pair that you've come up with. Now, I need to find the focus and the directrix. Again, my p-value, did I ever solve for that? No, I did not. Let's go back now and calculate p. So again, remember 4p is equal to this 1/3. So 4p equals 1/3. I could solve this as a proportion or multiply by the reciprocal because I'm dividing by 4. So if I put a 1 under that and do the cross products, I get 12p equals 1. Divide by 12, and p equals 1/12. So now my focus point is going to be 1/12 away from the vertex, and my directrix will be 1/12 away. So let's calculate that new equation and the new point. So again, we're using our vertex, 1/3, -13/3. I'm going to go ahead and put this as an improper fraction because I need to add 1/12 to it. It'll just be a little bit easier. So I'm still a U shape, so I'm working with the y. So -13/3 plus 1/12 to get the new focus. So, because right now, this is what we're going to be getting. Common denominator here, it's going to be 12. So this one's okay. This one I'm going to times 13 by 4, and I get 52. So -52/12 plus 1/12 is -51/12. So my focus point is positive 1/3 and then -51/12. This is the focus. For the directrix, we are going to subtract 1/12 from the 13/3. So for the directrix now, we will take -13/3 and we're subtracting 1/12. Again, common denominator is 12, and now I get 53 -/12. And again, it's an equation, so it's y equals -53/12. That's how we come up with all the pieces that we need to find. One more example. Again, we're doing the same thing, but this time it's going to be a C, but our process is still the same. So again, let's go ahead and we need to get rid of the 1/3. So I need to divide all those y's by 1/3, which is really like multiply by 3. So x equals 1/3 y squared minus 3y. Leave a little blank space there. Move the 2 out. I'm now going to take the b term, divide it by 2. So -3 divide by 2, square it, and I get 9/4. So that's what I'm putting here. But again, remember, the number that's going to go here is going to be 1/3 times 9/4. So then I'm going to add that to both sides. So this would give me, let me simplify. So what I'm going to be subtracting is 3/4. Because it's opposite sign. So now I need to add, or I can factor. So let's go ahead and factor all this. So x equals 1/3. Again, if you remember what you got when you divided the b term by 2, it's x minus 3 over 2 squared. Oh, y, thank you. Y. And then now I have to do 2 minus 3/4. Common denominator. I'm going to change the 2 into 8 over 4. And then I can subtract the 3/4. So I get plus 5 over 4. Again, I need it in the right form. So now I need to move the 5 over 4 to the other side. So subtract it. So x minus 5 over 4. And then I still have the 1/3 y minus 3/2 squared. Again, I want to flip-flop it because I want the squared term on the left. So 1/3 y minus 3/2 squared equals x minus 5 over 4. I need to divide by 1/3 to get that over to the other side. So dividing by 1/3 is really multiplying by the reciprocal, which is 3. So this would become y minus 3/2 squared equals 1/3 x minus 5 over 4. I can now find my p-value. So I take 4p and hold on, sorry. I'm multiplying by the reciprocal. I'm dividing by 1/3, but it really means multiply by 3 once I divide. Let me try to erase this. There should be a 3. So now 4p equals 3. Divide by 4, and my p-value is 3/4. My vertex, now again remember this is k, this is h, so my vertex is 5 over 4 comma 3/2. So that's the vertex. Got the p-value. I could go back to the beginning, and now this time notice your original was x equals. So I could actually find my x-intercept to solve this one since it's a c. So I'm going to find my x-intercept from the beginning. So x-intercept, I'm going to let y equal 0. So x equals 1/3 times 0 squared minus 0 plus 2. So x equals 2. So my x-intercept is going to occur at the order pair 2, 0. So let's go ahead and graph the vertex and my first order pair there. So 2, 0 I could put right here. The vertex, 5 over 4 is like 1 1/4, and 3 over 2 is like 1 1/2. So I'm going to come over here to 1 1/4 and then up to 1 1/2. So I can put my point about here. Let me do these points in blue, and then I'll do the focus and the directrix in red. All right, so there's my vertex and my x-intercept. Again, remember we're going to use the axis of symmetry. So remember when it's a y squared, it's a c. So here's my axis of symmetry. So I can get so far I've got this going. So now to get the other point, I'm going to go 1 1/2 up this way. So I can say that the other point might be about, let me go blue, and might look something like that. So that would be your parabola. Again, the focus point is inside. And again, remember my p-value was 3/4. So like 3/4 away from the vertex. So maybe about here. And then the directrix could be around here. So let's calculate it exactly. So again, we're going to use our vertex. 5, 4, 3/2. Again, this time it's a c, so we add and subtract to the x value. So for the new focus point, I'm going to do 5 over 4 plus 3 over 4. and this will give me 8 over 4. So we're going to see that the focus is going to be at the ordered pair 2, 3 over 2. Let's see where I put it. 2, so 2 and 3 over 2. So it's about right above there. All right, then the directrix, we're going to subtract the 3/4. So 5 over 4 minus 3 over 4 gives me 2 over 4, which is 1/2. And again, this time since it's a C, my directrix is going to be x equals 1/2. So we found the directrix, the focus, we graphed it, we found the vertex, we found the p-value, and we found one additional order pair. So be able to do all of this for all of these parabolas. Now, the next slide, the homework listed was the homework that was due today. So if you did not do it, make sure you complete it. I'm going to be giving you new homework on Monday after I teach you how to come up with the equation given the focus point and the directrix. So we're just manipulating all of this information in different forms. So if you've already done this homework, you don't have any homework over the weekend, we will be continuing on with day 3 of these parabolas on Monday. Any questions?